She made a meme of me during a panic attack. My face photoshopped onto a shaking dog in a bomb shelter. Captioned, "Guess who couldn't handle brunch?" Her friends laughed. She posted it while I was still curled behind the dryer, trying to breathe through flashbacks. That same night, she told her best friend I was a broken puppy you fake love until payday. Said my panic attacks were strategic assets. That's when I stopped crying and started listening. She thought PTSD made me weak. She forgot what 10 years in combat really taught me. I didn't just survive war. I learned how to win one. Quietly, precisely, permanently. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Matthew Callahan, and I'm 33 years old. After a decade in the Marines, I spend my nights pacing our suburban Louisville home while my wife Sarah sleeps upstairs. The same Sarah who used to write me letters filled with hope during my tours in Kandahar now barely meets my eyes across our kitchen table. My hands still shake when the neighbor's car backfires, and I've memorized every exit point in our house. Old habits from the sandbox die hard. Last week I caught Sarah smirking when I dropped behind the couch during a thunderstorm. She took a long sip of her Chardonnay and muttered something about attention-seeking. What she doesn't know is that combat taught me to read people better than any civilian course could. But let me start from the beginning. You know those first months back home? They're like walking through molasses. Everything familiar feels wrong, twisted somehow. The smell of Sarah's coffee in the morning used to be my comfort. Now it just reminds me I haven't slept more than 3 hours straight since touchdown at Louisville International. I tried explaining it to her once, how the smallest things can send you right back there. The whump-whump of helicopter blades becomes the ceiling fan in our bedroom. The pop of a neighbor's grill starting up sounds exactly like, well, you get the picture. But Sarah just stared at me like I was speaking Pashto, twirling her wine glass between manicured fingers. "Maybe you should try meditation," she'd say. Or, "Have you considered it might be all in your head?" Each suggestion delivered with that new smile of hers, tight, practiced, like she was handling a difficult customer at work. The washing machine incident happened on a Tuesday morning. I remember because Sarah had just bought new plates from Williams-Sonoma, those fancy white ceramic ones she'd been eyeing. She was running late for work, moving too fast, and one slipped from her hands. The sound of it shattering on our kitchen tile. Christ, it was like being right back there watching mortars rain down. Next thing I knew, I was wedged behind our dryer, combat breathing like they taught us, trying to remember I was in Kentucky, not Kandahar. Sarah found me there, still in my sleep clothes, covered in dust bunnies. "Jesus, Matt, it's not that deep." Her voice dripped with something between pity and disgust. "It's just a plate, you're being dramatic." I couldn't look at her. Couldn't explain how in that moment I wasn't her husband anymore. I was back being the Marine who watched his buddy step wrong in a poppy field. The sound wasn't so different, you know. But the backyard BBQ, that's when things really shifted. We had some neighbors over, couple of guys I knew from before deployment with their wives. Everyone was trying to act normal around me, like they always did now. Careful conversations about weather and home repairs. Nobody mentioning the news or asking about my service. I was manning the grill, focusing on the simple task of not burning the burgers, when a car alarm started wailing down the street. My hand tightened on the spatula, jaw clenched, fighting the urge to drop and find cover. I must have gone quiet because Sarah appeared at my elbow with that glass of hers. White wine, always white wine these days. "Oh, don't mind him," she announced to our guests, voice carrying across the patio. "He gets like this sometimes." Personally, I think this whole PTSD thing isn't even real. I mean, everyone has stress, right? The silence that followed was heavier than any combat gear I'd ever worn. Bob Miller, who'd known me since high school, suddenly found his beer label fascinating. His wife Carol's mouth hung open slightly, horror written across her face. I watched Sarah take another delicate sip, watched her realize nobody was laughing at her little joke. She recovered quickly, plastering on that customer service smile again. "I'm just saying maybe we all need to be a bit more resilient, that's all." The burger I was flipping charred black while I stood there, staring at this woman who used to send me care packages full of handwritten letters and her grandmother's cookies. The woman who once wrote that she was proud to be a Marine wife, that my service made her love me more. Something clicked then. watching her network that perfect smile around our stunned guests. It wasn't just that she didn't understand, she didn't want to understand. And underneath all that carefully applied concern was something calculating, something that made my combat-honed instincts buzz like they did before an ambush. 2 weeks after that BBQ disaster, I had an early morning VA appointment. Just routine stuff, checking meds, updating paperwork. The doc wanted to adjust my sleep prescriptions, so we wrapped up faster than usual. That's how I ended up pulling into our driveway at 10:30 instead of noon. Sarah's car was still there, which was odd. She usually left for work by 9. I figured maybe she was working from home. She did that sometimes when she had important calls. The garage door opener was acting up, so I used my key on the side door, stepping in quiet as a shadow. Old habits. Her voice drifted from the kitchen, that sharp laugh I'd grown to dread cutting through the morning quiet. She was on speakerphone, another thing she'd started doing lately, like she wanted to make sure I heard her conversations when I was home. "I'm telling you, Carla, it's worse than I thought. He's completely broken." Sarah's words froze me mid-step. Like a puppy you fake love until adoption day. Carla's tinny laugh crackled through the speaker. "God, that's cold. But you always had a plan, right? Just gotta write it out till I get what's mine." Sarah's voice had dropped to that smug tone she used when closing deals at work. "The pension paperwork finalizes in 6 weeks. Full spousal benefits guaranteed. All those months playing nursemaid to his trauma will finally pay off." My lungs forgot how to work. The world tilted sideways, then snapped back into focus with brutal clarity. Every gentle touch, every concerned look, every time she'd squeezed my hand during a panic attack, it had all been calculated. A performance. "But what if he figures it out?" Carla asked. "I mean, he was a Marine." Sarah's laugh turned cruel. "Please. He can barely handle a dropped plate without having a meltdown. Besides, I've been documenting everything. Every episode, every time he zones out. Building a nice little file to prove he's not mentally competent if I need it. The VA's already flagged him as disabled. That's worth an extra 20% in benefits right there." The granite counter felt cold under my palm. When had I reached out to steady myself? My combat training kicked in. Breathe slow, assess the situation, maintain cover. Don't give away your position. "You're evil," Carla giggled. "I love it. Hey, he's the one who re-enlisted knowing the risks. I just made sure I'd be taken care of if things went south. And honey, they went south the second he started jumping at shadows." I eased back toward the door, each step measured and silent. The skills that kept me alive in Kandahar now helping me retreat from my own kitchen. My own wife. That evening, Sarah breezed in from wherever she'd actually been all day, laptop balanced on one hip. She settled onto our old couch, the one she'd been complaining about for months, and pulled up a furniture website. "Matt, honey, come look at this sectional I found. It's perfect for the living room." Her voice was honey sweet, concerned. "I know how the old one bothers your back sometimes. We could use the joint account. It's such a good investment for us." Us. The word landed like shrapnel. I walked over, looked at the screen. $3,000 of leather and lies. She'd already clicked, add to cart. "What do you think?" She touched my arm just like she used to when I'd wake up shaking. "Don't you deserve something nice after everything?" I stared at her hand on my sleeve. This morning I would have leaned into that touch, grateful for any scrap of affection. Now I saw it for what it was. Another calculated move in her long game. "Whatever you think is best," I said, voice neutral. Years of mission briefings had taught me how to keep emotion locked down. Sarah beamed, already typing in our account information. She had no idea that behind my blank expression, gears were turning. Combat plans forming. Because she'd made one critical mistake in all her careful calculations. She thought my wounds had made me weak. But you don't survive 2 tours in hell by breaking easily. And you don't make it home by letting the enemy see you coming. The house felt different now. Every room held echoes of lies, every surface tainted by her performance. I sat at our kitchen table, the one she'd picked out last spring, insisting we needed something more stable, and pulled up our marriage timeline on my phone. You know that moment when scattered puzzle pieces suddenly form a picture? That's what happened as I scrolled through old photos. Sarah had pushed for that courthouse wedding exactly 2 weeks before my re-enlistment papers were due. She'd called it romantic, spontaneous. "Why wait?" she'd said, eyes bright with what I'd thought was love. Now I recognized it as calculation. The memory of that day hit me like a punch to the gut. The smell of old wood and floor polish. Sarah in that cream-colored dress she'd just happened to have ready. How she'd insisted on reading through every line of the marriage certificate, making sure all the military status boxes were checked correctly. Detail-oriented, she'd called herself. Strategic was more like it. My hands shook as I opened a fresh note on my phone. Not the regular Notes app, a burner one I'd downloaded for secure field communications back in Kandahar. Old habits die hard, and right now those habits might save me. First entry. Marriage date. 2 weeks pre-re-enlistment. Spousal benefits lock in after 10 years service plus disability rating. I worked backward through the past 6 months. Every eye roll when I mentioned therapy, every forgotten invitation to VA support groups, the way she'd started handling all our banking to reduce my stress. Each memory carried new weight now. Then there were the spending patterns. I pulled up our joint account history. Large purchases all in her name, starting the week after my disability rating came through. Home improvements, designer furniture, a work wardrobe refresh that cost more than 3 months of groceries. Getting what's mine, she'd said to Carla. The words burned in my gut. I checked the pension paperwork date again. 6 weeks until everything locked in permanently. 6 weeks until she could push for power of attorney, claiming I was too unstable to manage my own affairs. The thought made my jaw clench so hard my teeth creaked. You learn things in combat zones: patience, observation, the art of letting your target think they've won while you're actually setting up the kill shot. I'd spent 2 tours watching for hidden IEDs, reading terrain for ambush points. This wasn't so different. My phone buzzed. Sarah asking if I wanted to meet her for lunch. "To discuss our future," the text read. My thumb hovered over the screen. Each word felt loaded now, a trap waiting to spring. I thought about confronting her. God, I wanted to. Wanted to throw every lying moment back in her face. But the tactical part of my brain, the part that kept me alive when everything went sideways overseas, that part said, wait. Instead I typed back, not feeling great, maybe tomorrow. Let her think I was having another bad day. Let her add it to her little file of episodes. I opened a new secure email account and started forwarding myself copies of every financial document I could access. Bank statements, credit card bills, the original marriage certificate, the disability rating paperwork, each one a piece of ammunition in a war she didn't know was coming. The irony wasn't lost on me. She thought my combat experience had broken me, made me an easy mark. But those years in the sandbox had taught me more than how to jump at loud noises. They'd taught me how to survive, how to fight smart instead of hard. My hands were steady now as I typed the last note of the day. 6 weeks until pension lock-in. Surveillance and documentation phase initiated. The late afternoon sun slanted through our kitchen window, the same window where I'd stood countless times, trying to ground myself after nightmares. Only this time, I wasn't fighting shadows in my head. This enemy was real, living in my house, sleeping in my bed, planning my destruction with a smile. I closed the notebook app and cleared my browser history. 6 weeks. She had no idea what was coming. The VA waiting room smelled like coffee and old magazines. I'd picked this time, 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, because Sarah never left work before 5. Through the window, late September sun warmed the brick courtyard where a few vets lounged on benches, swapping stories I could almost hear through the glass. Mike, my regular counselor, had made the JAG connection through back channels. Just checking some benefit questions, I'd told Sarah that morning. She'd barely looked up from her phone, just waved me off with a distracted, "Whatever helps, honey." The dismissal in her voice made my stomach turn. The JAG officer's name was Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, a sharp-eyed woman with silver threading her dark hair. Her office felt like a bunker. Windowless, practical, secure. The kind of place where truth lived in filing cabinets. "So," she said, settling behind her desk, "Mike mentioned you needed clarity on spousal benefits." Her tone was neutral, but I caught the slight narrowing of her eyes. She'd seen cases like mine before. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app. Yes, ma'am. Specifically regarding fraud protection and disability pension rights. For the next hour, we dissected federal codes and veteran protection clauses. My hand stayed busy, taking detailed notes while she explained how spousal benefits worked, and more importantly, how they could be revoked. The system's designed to protect veterans, Hayes explained, sliding a folder across her desk, especially those with service-connected disabilities. Any evidence of manipulation or exploitation? What kind of evidence? The words came out sharper than I meant them to. She leaned back. Financial records, communications, witness statements, documented patterns of behavior suggesting premeditated fraud. A pause. Or emotional abuse targeting the disability itself. My jaw tightened. I thought about Sarah's wine-loose mockery of my panic attacks, her performative eye rolls during my night terrors, all those jokes about PTSD being trendy. Hayes must have read something in my face. How long until your pension paperwork finalizes? 5 weeks, 4 days. She nodded slowly. That's enough time. If you're gathering evidence, keep it clean, professional. Nothing that could read as retaliation. I got home that evening to find Sarah in the kitchen, laptop open to our banking website. The sight of her there, casual as a snake in the grass, made my chest tight. Hey baby, she said, voice honey sweet. I've been thinking about what you said, about being overwhelmed. Maybe I should handle the finances for a while. You know, until you're feeling more. She waved her hand vaguely. Stable. Remember that smell of gun oil and sand right before an ambush? How everything goes quiet except your own heartbeat. That's what this felt like. Yeah, I said, keeping my voice tired, defeated. Maybe you're right. Her smile widened just a fraction. I'll just need access to your VA direct deposit info for bill planning. I fumbled with my phone, making sure my hands shook just enough. Missed therapy again today, I mumbled. Got lost in the parking lot. That got her attention. Her eyes lit up like a sniper finding their target. Oh, honey. That's the 3rd time this month. She stood, came around the counter to touch my arm. You know what? I'll call them tomorrow. Set up a better schedule for you. I nodded, pulled up my banking app, handed her just enough access to hang herself. Thanks. Don't know what I'd do without you. Later that night, I lay awake listening to her breathe. The same tactical patience that kept me alive in Kandahar thrummed in my veins now. Every fake stumble, every forgotten appointment, they were coordinates on a map, leading to one target. My phone buzzed softly. A message from Hayes. Documentation templates attached. Start building your case file. I looked at Sarah's sleeping form, remembered how she'd laughed at me during that BBQ, how she'd called me broken to her friend. The templates downloaded silently in the dark. The game was on. 2 days after meeting Hayes, I called Leo. If you've never served, you might not understand how deep those bonds go. We'd shared foxholes in Kandahar, cleared IEDs together under that merciless sun. One call, that's all it took. Jesus Christ, Matt, he said when I finished explaining. His voice carried that familiar gravel, like he'd been gargling sand since deployment. Tomorrow, I'll bring the gear. You ever notice how the worst days start normal? Sarah left early for brunch with the girls, barely a goodbye tossed over her shoulder. The sound of her car fading away took me back to convoy engines disappearing around desert corners. Funny how memory works. Leo showed up exactly when he said he would, carrying a black equipment bag that looked military grade but wasn't. The salt and pepper in his crew cut was new, but that focused look in his eyes. Pure Marine. She's gotten sloppy, he said, setting up his laptop at my kitchen table. The mint gum he was chewing filled the air with a clean, sharp scent. Using the same Apple ID for everything, backing up to shared cloud storage. His fingers moved across the keyboard like he was disarming explosives. Careful, precise. People think deleting means gone. It doesn't. I watched him work, thinking about all those nights in Afghanistan when he'd rewire communication systems while mortars fell. Now here he was dismantling a different kind of threat. Got it, he muttered after about an hour. Christ, Matt, you better sit down. The first messages popped up on his screen. Conversations with someone named Trent. Dates going back 14 months. My throat went dry when I saw the timestamps. Right before my last deployment. "Look at this thread," Leo said, his jaw tight. He pulled up a chat window hidden behind what looked like a calculator app. Trent. "Timeline still good?" Sarah. "Perfect. His next VA eval is Thursday. Playing up the PTSD thing hard." Trent. "Smart girl. Keep pushing for joint accounts." Sarah. "Already done. He's so messed up he barely checks the statements." My hands curled into fists. Leo glanced at me, concern etched in the lines around his eyes. "There's more," he said quietly. He wasn't wrong. The deeper he dug, the worse it got. Photos of them together at hotels, screenshots of my bank statements, even a crude meme she'd made of me during a panic attack, shared in a group chat where they all laughed about it. "Here's the kicker," Leo said, pulling up an audio file. Voice memo from 3 weeks ago. Sarah's voice filled the kitchen, crystal clear. He's basically a walking lawsuit waiting to sign his name. "Once the pension locks in, we're golden. Just gotta play supportive wife until then." A pause, then laughter. "God, you should see him jump when a car backfires. It's pathetic." The rage that hit me wasn't hot. It was ice cold, like the mountain winds in Kandahar. Leo must have seen it in my face because he reached over, gripped my shoulder. "There's a video file here too," he said. Timestamp shows it's from last week. The footage was from some restaurant. Sarah sat close to a guy I didn't recognize. Square jaw, designer stubble, Bluetooth permanently attached to his ear. Had to be Trent. They were laughing about something on her phone. "That's the last panic attack," Sarah's voice said off camera. Behind the washing machine, like a scared kid. Trent's laugh was expensive. Practiced. "Once we get the POA pushed through," he said, "we can—" "Stop," I said. The word came out like a command. Leo killed the video. We sat there in silence for a minute. Just the hum of his laptop fans and the ghost of Sarah's laughter hanging in the air. "I'm copying everything," Leo said finally, plugging in an external drive. "Triple backups. She can't delete her way out of this one." I nodded, watching the progress bar fill. Each percentage point felt like another nail in a coffin I was building for my marriage. "The timestamps matter," Leo added, still chewing his mint gum. "Shows premeditation, pattern of behavior." He glanced at me. "Hayes will want this organized chronologically." "How'd you know about Hayes?" He gave me that familiar half-smile, the one I'd seen 1,000 times in combat when he'd found a solution to an impossible problem. "Brother, who do you think recommended her to Mike?" Leo's typing slowed, then stopped. His face, usually unshakable even under fire, went slack. "Matt, you need to see this." He turned the laptop toward me. There it was. A meme she'd created and shared in some private group chat. My head, badly photoshopped onto a trembling shelter dog. The caption read, "Guess who couldn't handle brunch?" Below it, laughing emojis and comments piled up. "Nice editing," someone wrote. "OMG dying," said another. "Better keep him away from the squeaky toys." That one was Sarah. You know that feeling when a mortar hits nearby? That split second where everything goes quiet and your chest compresses? That's what it felt like staring at that image. My hands gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles went white. "There's more," Leo said, his voice tight. He scrolled through a chain of messages between Sarah and Trent. They were discussing my medication. Sarah. "Switched his morning dose, double strength." Trent. "That'll help with the episodes, right?" Sarah. "Already working. Had a complete meltdown at the hardware store. Perfect timing, too. His VA counselor saw the whole thing." My stomach lurched. That hardware store incident, I'd been so confused. The panic had come out of nowhere, worse than usual. Now I knew why. "Jesus Christ," Leo muttered, still scrolling. Then he froze. "Matt, this is it. This is what she's been building toward." He pulled up a PDF. Official letterhead, notary stamp clearly visible at the bottom. The title made my blood run cold. Petition for Emergency Power of Attorney. The document was dated 3 days ago. As I read, something inside me, Something I thought the war had burned away started to crack. Due to persistent and escalating symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, Matthew Callahan has demonstrated an increasing inability to manage his own affairs, exhibits paranoid tendencies, frequently disoriented, unable to make sound financial or legal decisions. It went on for pages. Every single moment of weakness, every panic attack, every nightmare, weaponized and twisted into evidence of my incompetence. She'd even included statements from concerned friends who'd witnessed my episodes. Leo's mint gum stopped moving. She's setting you up, brother. Once she gets POA, she controls everything, I finished. My voice sounded strange, distant. My pension, my benefits, my whole damn life. The tremor started in my hands, not the usual PTSD shake, but something deeper. Raw, primal. I thought about all those nights I'd spent in the sandbox, reading her emails about how proud she was, how much she loved me, how she'd be there when I got home. Look at the routing number on page 4, Leo said quietly. That's not your joint account. He was right. The document specified all funds should be redirected to an account I'd never seen before. Probably one she'd set up with Trent. There's a timeline here too, Leo continued, pulling up another file. They've got it all mapped out. Get the POA approved, transfer everything within 48 hours, then file for divorce citing your dangerous instability. She'd walk away with everything, including future benefits. The kitchen felt too small suddenly. The walls seemed to pulse with each heartbeat. I could hear Sarah upstairs humming as she got ready for her book club, probably another meeting with Trent. I need air, I managed to say, standing up so fast my chair scraped across the floor. Leo nodded, understanding in his eyes. I'll keep digging. Going to image her phone next. Guarantee there's more evidence there. I stepped onto the back porch, letting the cool evening air hit my face. Behind me, I could hear Leo's fingers back on the keyboard, methodically dismantling my marriage one recovered file at a time. The trembling in my hands wouldn't stop, but for the first time since coming home, I knew exactly what it meant. This wasn't trauma shaking loose. This was rage, pure and focused at the realization that the woman I'd trusted with my life had been planning its destruction all along. Sleep's a funny thing after combat. You learn to function without it, running on coffee and pure willpower. That night, though, the insomnia wasn't from the usual nightmares. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face lit up by her phone screen, laughing at that meme of me. The shaking dog in a bomb shelter. Her little jokes about my episodes. You ever notice how betrayal has a physical weight? It sits right in the center of your chest, heavy as a plate carrier loaded with ceramic inserts. I lay there in our bed, listening to Sarah's steady breathing beside me, and felt that weight pressing down. The woman I'd written letters to from dusty forward operating bases whose photo I'd kept in my helmet. She'd never really existed. Or maybe she had, and this creature beside me had eaten her alive. The alarm clicked over to 5:30 a.m. I got up quietly, muscle memory from 100 pre-dawn patrols keeping my footsteps silent. In the kitchen, I started the coffee maker, that rich morning smell triggering a flash of nostalgia. My dad's workshop had always smelled like coffee and sawdust at sunrise. Simple, honest, everything my marriage wasn't. Sarah came down around 7, wrapped in that silk robe she'd bought with our joint account. Morning, honey, she chirped, pouring herself coffee. Sleep okay? I nodded, pushing scrambled eggs around my plate. Better than usual. Good. Her smile was perfect, practiced. Because I've been thinking about that pension certification appointment next week. You've been so stressed lately. Here it came. I kept my eyes on my breakfast, maintaining the defeated posture she'd grown used to. What if I handle it for you? She suggested, voice dripping concern. You know how those government offices trigger your anxiety. I could take care of everything. You wouldn't even have to leave the house. I looked up, letting my hands shake slightly. Just enough. You'd do that? Of course, baby. She reached across the table, squeezing my trembling fingers. That's what wives are for. The urge to yank my hand back, to scream every truth I knew right in her face, it burned like acid in my throat. Instead, I gave her exactly what she wanted. A weak smile. "Thanks," I whispered. That would help a lot." Her eyes lit up with triumph barely masked as compassion. "I'll call them today, see if I can get everything transferred to my name." For simplicity's sake. I nodded again, then pulled out my phone. "Actually, I already looked into it. We need to see a mediator first. Some new VA policy. I booked us for Monday at 10. For a fraction of a second, her mask slipped. Annoyance flashed across her features before the concerned wife facade snapped back into place. "A mediator? Is that really necessary?" "Just a formality," I assured her. "Sign some papers, confirm I'm, not fully capable. Then you can handle everything else." She relaxed, reaching for the appointment confirmation I'd pulled up. Her manicured nail tapped the screen as she read. "Family court mediator?" she asked. "Yeah, they handle all the VA stuff now. Something about streamlining the process." The lie rolled off my tongue smooth as gun oil. "I figured you'd want it done properly." Sarah's smile widened. Of course she did. Her own perfectly crafted legal trap was about to snap shut. Or so she thought. "I'm so proud of you," she said, standing to kiss my forehead. "Taking initiative. Being responsible. This is exactly why we need to get everything sorted out properly." I forced myself to lean into her touch like I had so many times since coming home. "Couldn't do it without you." She headed upstairs to get ready for work, humming that same tune from yesterday. I watched her go, thinking about the JAG officer's words. Family court mediators have federal authority. If you can prove fraud during a benefit certification hearing, it triggers automatic investigations. 5 days. 5 days until that mediator's office, where Leo's carefully gathered evidence would strip away every lie Sarah had built. Where her own words, her cruel jokes, her secret plans with Trent, all of it would detonate right in front of her. I pulled out my phone and texted Leo. She took the bait. Monday at 10. His response came back instantly. "Files prepped. Time to end this, brother." Monday morning dawned clear and cold. You know that crisp autumn air that makes everything feel sharp and real? That's what hit my lungs as I stepped onto our front porch, waiting for Sarah. She came out looking perfect. Navy blazer, cream blouse, hair swept back in a professional twist. Every inch the concerned spouse ready to take on bureaucracy for her struggling husband. The sight of her like that, so carefully crafted, made my stomach turn. Reminded me of those training exercises where we'd build pristine-looking structures, knowing they were rigged to blow. "Ready, honey?" She adjusted my collar with practiced tenderness. "Remember, just let me do most of the talking. These things can get complicated." I nodded, playing up the nervous energy she expected. Truth was, my hands were dead steady for the first time in months. Combat clarity, we used to call it. That ice-cold focus when you know exactly what's coming and exactly what you need to do. The mediator's office sat in one of those bland government buildings downtown. Sarah kept her hand on my arm as we walked in, like she was steadying me. The receptionist directed us to a conference room where a sharp-looking woman in her 50s waited behind a broad desk. "Mr. and Mrs. Callahan?" The mediator, Ms. Rodriguez according to her nameplate, stood to greet us. "Please have a seat." Sarah guided me to a chair like I was made of glass. "We're here about the pension certification transfer," she said smoothly. "My husband's condition makes handling these matters difficult for him." Ms. Rodriguez's expression gave nothing away. "I understand. Before we begin, I have some standard documentation for both parties to review." She reached into her desk and pulled out 2 identical manila folders. The moment those folders hit the table, I felt Sarah's confidence surge beside me. This was her element. Paperwork, procedures, control. She probably thought these were just forms to sign. "Please take a moment to examine the contents," Ms. Rodriguez said, sliding one folder to each of us. I opened mine first, letting my hands tremble slightly for show. Inside, organized behind numbered tabs, was everything. The recovered text between Sarah and Trent time-stamped and authenticated, screenshots of deleted messages mocking my PTSD, financial records showing her systematic attempts to gain control of my accounts, that cruel meme she'd made of me during a panic attack. And there, under the final tab, her pre-drafted power of attorney application, complete with notary stamps and highlighted sections claiming my mental incompetence. Sarah's folder contained identical copies. I watched from the corner of my eye as she began to flip through the pages. Her perfectly manicured fingers stilled. Her throat worked once, twice. The color started draining from her face like someone had pulled a plug. "I don't," she started, voice suddenly thin. "I'm not sure what." The conference room door opened. Leo walked in, dressed in a crisp suit that barely contained his marine-built frame. "Sorry I'm late," he said, nodding to Ms. Rodriguez. "Traffic was rough." "Not at all, Mr. Granger," the mediator replied. "Please join us. The documentation notes you're here as Mr. Callahan's technical witness?" "Yes, ma'am." Leo sat down beside me, placing his laptop on the table. "I've got the full digital forensics report ready, if needed." Sarah's eyes had gone wide, darting between Leo and the papers in front of her. I could almost see her mind racing, trying to calculate angles of escape, but there weren't any. Every scheme, every cruel joke, every manipulative move, it was all laid out in black and white. She turned to me, lips parted to speak, but for once I didn't flinch or look away. I met her gaze steadily, letting her see what she'd missed all along. I wasn't broken. I wasn't weak. I was a Marine who'd survived worse than her, and I'd been 3 steps ahead this entire time. "Now then, Ms. Rodriguez said, opening her own copy of the file, "shall we discuss the implications of attempted benefits fraud against a disabled veteran?" The ice in Sarah's eyes cracked. In that moment, watching her mask finally shatter, I felt something hard inside me release, like putting down a heavy pack after a long march. Sarah's composure cracked like thin ice. These are just out of context," she stammered, shuffling through the papers. "Private jokes between friends, you can't possibly—" "Private jokes?" Ms. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow, lifting a particular page. "Like this text message to Mr. Trent Davidson dated March 15th. Once the POA goes through, we can start moving real money. He's too zoned out to notice anyway." My stomach clenched. Even knowing what was coming, hearing those words read aloud felt like taking shrapnel. "Or perhaps this email chain," the mediator continued, "where you discuss, and I quote, timing the paperwork around his bad episodes." She looked up, her professional mask hiding what had to be discussed. "Mrs. Callahan, premeditated manipulation of a disabled veteran's benefits is a federal offense." "You don't understand." Sarah's voice took on that honey-sweet tone she used when cornered. "Matt's condition, he gets confused. I was trying to protect him." Leo cleared his throat. "Ma'am, if I may." He opened his laptop, turning it so the mediator could see. The metadata shows systematic deletion attempts, use of encrypted messaging apps, and consistent pattern matching with known fraud techniques. This wasn't protection. This was a coordinated effort to gain control of federal benefits. I watched Sarah's fingers drum against the table, her tell when she was about to switch tactics. Right on cue, she turned to me, eyes wide and wounded. "Matt, honey, you know I only wanted to make memes about my panic attacks." I kept my voice steady. "To joke about dosing my meds? To call me broken while planning your exit strategy?" Her mouth snapped shut. "Ms. Rodriguez shuffled some papers. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm making an immediate recommendation for disqualification from all spousal pension benefits." She began stamping forms with methodical precision. "Furthermore, given the attempted power of attorney fraud, I'm required to forward these findings to the VA's legal department for review." Sarah's face went from pale to ashen. "You can't do that." "My job has already been notified," Leo cut in, checking his phone. "Federal contractors have strict ethics clauses. The cybersecurity team received the evidence package 20 minutes ago." I remembered how proud Sarah had been when she landed that government contract position, how she'd lorded it over our old friends with her security clearance and insider status. Now all that carefully built prestige was unraveling in real time. "This is ridiculous," she tried one last time, but her voice had lost its edge. "I have rights. I'll appeal." "You have the right to appeal through proper channels," Ms. Rodriguez agreed, still stamping. "However, Given the documented evidence of attempted benefits fraud, false statements on federal forms, and ethical violations, I wouldn't recommend it. She looked up finally, fixing Sarah with a steel gaze. Further scrutiny rarely helps in cases like this. My phone buzzed. A text from Leo. HR just pulled her badge access. Watching Sarah's world collapse should have felt satisfying. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired but clean, like after a long march through rough country finally reaching clear ground. The mediator slid a final form across the table. Mr. Callahan, your pension benefits are now secured solely in your name. The fraud attempt will be flagged in federal databases to prevent future claims. She turned to Sarah. Mrs. Callahan, you'll be receiving formal notifications from several departments within 72 hours. I suggest retaining legal counsel. Sarah sat there, straight-backed but empty, like someone had pulled her batteries. All her careful plans, her calculated manipulations, her sure thing, gone in less than an hour. We're done here, Ms. Rodriguez announced, closing her folder with finality. Mr. Granger, thank you for your technical expertise. Mr. Callahan. She met my eyes with something like respect. The VA's counseling services are available if you need them. I nodded, standing slowly. Part of me wanted to say something to Sarah, not in anger or triumph, just something. But looking at her now, I realized there was nothing left to say. She'd shown me exactly who she was. All I'd done was prove I was paying attention. 2 weeks after the mediation, I stood in front of a weathered garage door, key trembling slightly in my hand. You ever have a moment where everything feels both terrifying and exactly right? That was this. The metal groaned as I rolled it up, revealing the space I'd been eyeing for months. It wasn't much, maybe 20 by 30 feet, concrete floor, exposed beams overhead. But it was mine. Well, leased anyway, at a rate the VA property manager practically apologized for quoting. The morning sun slanted through dusty windows, catching motes that danced like desert sand. For a second, my throat tightened. But this wasn't Kandahar dust. This was possibility floating in clean Kentucky air. I'd already moved most of my stuff in, what little I had after the split. But today was different. Today, I was bringing in Dad's old lathe, the same one I'd learned on, spending countless teenage hours watching curls of cherry and maple peel away under his patient guidance. The scent of fresh-cut wood used to drive my allergies crazy, but I never cared. It meant I was creating something real. Remember how I mentioned working in his shop growing up? Those memories kept me sane some nights overseas. The steady thrum of the motor, the weight of the chisel in my hand, Dad's quiet, "Now watch this part," as he demonstrated some new technique. The lathe had sat in storage since he passed, waiting for the right moment. This was it. It took me most of the morning to get everything positioned. The lathe needed its own circuit. Dad had taught me that much about electrical. I'd run the wiring last week, checking it 3 times because that's what he would have done. Set up the tool rest, adjusted the belt tension, cleaned every surface until it gleamed. Around noon, I heard boots scuffing concrete outside. "Hello?" A guy about my age stood in the doorway, VA outpatient badge clipped to his jacket. "Sorry, I was walking past, saw the woodworking setup." "Come on in," I said, recognizing that hungry look. He introduced himself as Mike, Force Recon, 2 tours in Helmand. We talked tools for a while, then he asked if he could watch me work. I had some walnut blanks ready, beautiful stuff with deep grain patterns. Mounted one on the lathe, flicked the switch. The familiar hum filled the space and my hands remembered their dance. Roughing gouge first, then detail work. Mike didn't say much, just watched the wood take shape. "Something about the sound," he said finally. "It's steady." I nodded. "Predictable, controllable." "Yeah." He rubbed his neck. "They got me doing art therapy up in the center, paint and clay and stuff. But this," he gestured at the lathe, "this makes more sense." By mid-afternoon, 3 more vets had wandered in. Word travels fast in the VA network. One guy brought coffee. Another recognized my unit patch and shared stories about Kandahar's dust storms. But mostly they watched the wood turn, asked questions about tools, talked about maybe learning. I found myself explaining basic techniques, the way Dad had done for me. See how the grain catches light here? That tells you where to start your cut. The teaching felt natural, like my hands had been waiting to pass these motions on. Near sunset, I finished the first piece. A simple bowl, nothing fancy. But the walnut grain spiraled perfectly from rim to base, each line flowing into the next. Mike ran his fingers along the smooth surface, nodding slowly. "You're gonna do classes, right?" he asked. Because I'd sign up. Think others would too. I looked around the shop, my shop, seeing it through new eyes. The workbenches I'd built last week could hold 6 students easily. The walls had space for tool racks, safety gear. The VA already had programs for art therapy. Why not woodworking? "Yeah," I said, surprising myself with how right it felt. "Yeah, I think I am." We spent another hour sketching out ideas. Mike knew people in VA administration who might help with funding. Another guy mentioned he had spare clamps and chisels he'd donate. The energy in the room felt electric, purposeful. As they left, I stood in the doorway watching the sun sink behind the VA's main building. The air smelled like fresh-cut walnut and machine oil. Dad would have loved this, I thought. Not just the shop, but what it was becoming. A place where broken edges could be smoothed, where chaos turned to craft. I ran my hand along his lathe one last time before locking up. Tomorrow I'd start proper class planning, safety protocols, supply lists. But right now I just let myself feel the peace of simple things, wood grain, steel tools, and the quiet certainty that I'd found my way home. 2 weeks after opening the shop, I couldn't keep up with demand. Word had spread through the VA like wildfire. Every morning, new faces appeared in the doorway, drawn by the lathe's hum or the scent of fresh sawdust. They'd stand there, hesitant at first, until I'd wave them in. You ever notice how some memories hit different when you're helping others through similar stuff? I kept thinking about my first week back home, how that washing machine had been my foxhole during panic attacks. Now I was watching guys who'd been through their own hells find peace in simple movements, measuring twice, cutting once, sanding until their hands knew every grain. Dr. Martinez from the VA's mental health wing stopped by one afternoon. She watched Tommy, a former Army Ranger who hadn't spoken above a whisper in months, explain dovetail joints to another vet. "This is working better than 6 months of group therapy," she said, shaking her head in wonder. I didn't have the heart to tell her I'd learned that lesson years ago, watching Dad teach neighborhood kids in his shop. Some hurts need more than words to heal. The volunteer list grew faster than I expected. Jake, a retired master sergeant who'd lost his left leg, turned out to be a wizard with finishing techniques. Maria, who'd served as a combat medic, organized our safety protocols better than any manual I could have written. Even Mike, that first visitor, now ran beginner classes 3 afternoons a week. But we needed something else, something to mark this space as more than just another VA program. The idea hit me during a late-night session, working on a commission piece while the shop was quiet. I selected the oak board carefully, old growth, with tight grain lines that told stories of centuries. Cut it to size, planned it smooth as glass. The burning took hours. Each letter had to be perfect, deep enough to catch shadows but clean enough to read clear across the room. She mocked my wounds. I rebuilt from them. Simple words, true words. Not just my story anymore, but something bigger. The mounting brackets were hand-forged by Carlos, a former CB who'd found his way to our shop. Above the door, he suggested, helping me position the beam, so everyone sees it when they walk in. We worked in comfortable silence, the kind you only find among people who understand. The drill whirred, anchors bit deep into concrete. Carlos held the level while I made final adjustments. "My wife left when the nightmares got bad," he said quietly, eyes fixed on the bubble in the level. "Said she couldn't handle my drama." He tapped the bracket twice with his wrench. Perfect alignment, by the way. I stepped back, letting the morning light catch the burned letters. Around us, the shop was coming alive. Jake was showing a new guy proper chisel technique. Maria had safety glasses and ear protection ready for the 9 a.m. class. Through the windows, I could see 3 more vets walking up, coffee cups in hand, talking and laughing. "You know what gets me?" Mike said, appearing beside me to study the mounted quote. Sarah thought she was breaking you down. Instead, she accidentally helped build all this. He gestured around the shop, now humming with activity. Karma's got a weird sense of humor, doesn't it? I ran my fingers over the oak beam one last time, feeling the sharp edges of each burned letter. My hands didn't shake anymore. Hadn't in weeks, actually. Turns out focus is its own kind of medicine. All right, folks, I called out, turning to face the morning class. Let's talk about proper grain orientation. The tools were ready, the wood was waiting, and through the doorway, under those burned words, another group of warriors was about to learn how to build something beautiful from rough stock. Time has a funny way of healing things, doesn't it? 6 months after that day in the mediator's office, I barely thought about Sarah anymore. Sure, sometimes I'd catch myself reaching for 2 coffee mugs in the morning, but those moments got fewer and farther between. The last I heard, she'd moved 3 states over. No forwarding address, no goodbye note, just empty closets and a few designer shoes she'd forgotten in her rush to disappear. Her company's ethics board had blacklisted her from federal contracts, which meant her carefully crafted career was as dead as our marriage. Sometimes karma works better than revenge ever could. You know what really got me, though? The silence. Not the empty kind that used to suffocate me during panic attacks, but the good kind. The kind where you can actually hear yourself think. No more walking on eggshells, no more analyzing every word for hidden barbs. Just the honest sounds of work and healing. The workshop became something I never expected. Remember how Dad's old shop used to smell of sawdust and coffee? This place had that same feeling, but with an extra layer of purpose. Every morning I'd unlock the door to find 2 or 3 vets already waiting outside, thermoses in hand, ready to lose themselves in the work. The sound of planers smoothing rough lumber reminded me of rain on tent canvas, steady, rhythmic, almost meditative. Jake taught the new guys how to read grain patterns while balanced on his prosthetic leg, moving with the kind of grace that comes from accepting your new normal. Maria kept our first aid kit stocked and our safety protocols sharp, treating splinters with the same focused care she'd once given to combat wounds. I stood at my workbench one afternoon, running my hands over a piece of cherry I was shaping into a jewelry box. The wood felt alive under my fingers, warm, responsive, honest in a way people sometimes aren't. A young Marine named Rodriguez was working nearby, his hands steady on a chisel despite the burn scars that covered them. "You know what I love about this place?" he said, not looking up from his work. "Nobody asks if you're okay. They just hand you a tool and let you be not okay until you are." The truth in those words hit harder than any of Sarah's schemes ever had. Here we were, a bunch of broken pieces learning to build beautiful things. The irony wasn't lost on me. Above us, that oak beam caught the afternoon light, its burned letters deep and permanent. She mocked my wounds. I rebuilt from them. Simple truth, carved in wood. Every veteran who walked through that door saw it, and every one of them understood it differently. For some, it was about ex-wives who couldn't handle the nightmares. For others, it was about society's quick judgments or families who expected them to just get over it. Mike came in with his usual Tuesday group, 4 new faces, all carrying the tight shoulders and wary eyes I recognized from my own mirror not so long ago. He caught my eye and nodded toward the beam. "First thing I show them," he said quietly. "Lets them know it's okay to hurt, but it's also okay to build something new from it." I watched them gather around the workbenches, shoulders gradually loosening as Jake started explaining basic tool safety. The shop filled with the honest sounds of work, measuring tape snapping, pencils marking, sawdust hitting the floor. No judgment, no pressure, just the simple satisfaction of creating something solid and real. My hands moved over the cherry wood again, feeling for imperfections. They didn't shake anymore. Hadn't in months, actually. Funny how the thing Sarah used to mock had become the very thing that proved her wrong. Every steady cut, every smooth plane stroke, every perfectly fitted joint was another quiet victory. The afternoon light slanted through our dusty windows, catching the gold letters above the door. Below them, veterans worked and laughed and healed, building beautiful things from rough stock. Some wounds don't need bandages, they need purpose. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rebuilding something stronger than what was broken. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.